Aloha. I wanted to make this video in reference to the last few videos and just kind of expand it and refine the perspective a little bit. There's just a few points that I wanted to share, and it starts and centers around the idea, the perspective that if you are not part of the solution, then you are part of the problem. And the quote, I can't remember who said this quote, but indifference to evil is worse than evil itself. That's kind of like the perspective I'm coming from when I reference the indigenous story and the Aboriginal story, the genocide, the massacres, and so on and so forth. And I've seen some people in the comment section reference, oh, you don't talk about the indigenous white people, the Europeans, and so on and so forth. I can only share my story as it comes to me. I can only share like my story as I share it on YouTube. I wouldn't be saying this information if it wasn't rooted in the heart of myself, who I am. I can only share to the depths of who I am based upon my experiences. So my experiences are driven not only by my friends and family, peers, culture, history, so on and so forth, but the knowingness that there are also people out there that are just like me on many different ways, just not racially, but many different ways, thought processes, because that's normally where I'm coming from. That just like I did or was like a few years ago or even longer than that, was having difficulty with having any kind of hope, having any kind of reference points to interpret my reality that's outside of the destructive storyline that we are presented with every day, this hopeless codependent mentality that is projected by the mainstream media, even by conspiracy stories. Like it's all just like dead energy, to where you just see these stories and they're so bad, it's so dangerous, it's so hopeless. These so-called powers that be are so powerful. You know, what can little old me or little old us do to challenge anything about this system? So I've gone through a lot of these layers of self-destructive programming that really boils down to, on a very general perspective, self-love. Being able to love yourself. In order to love yourself, you have to first know yourself. So I grew up in a family, a culture, a city and a state that's known for, you know, having its own sort of style, having its own. California has its own kind of style of people. Oakland has its own style, their own dances, our own music, our own accents. Even like some people who know, like when you speak, you know, he's from Oakland or something like that. Like there's that whole feel there. It's not just a thing that exists in vibration land. It's something that is very tangible to the soul essence of the individual and the group that is having those connections. So when people asked me to speak more on the white indigenous European peoples and their storyline and their references of them coming, the Nordic travelers and all that other stuff, like I see those storylines, but right now what's more important to me to reference is what has happened in the recent past that is still happening today. And when I do reference indigenous and Aboriginal people, I'm referencing that as a frequency, as a vibration that is no different than like when I reference like white people. Like there are no white people, there are no black people. That is a code that is meant to limit people. There are European people, there are cultures, there are people that are so-called black that are the whitest people that I've ever known, and vice versa. Like people who will go to the depths of speaking in reference to whatever it goes. Like it's all about what you're your actions, your quality, your character. Like, it's not. Now, I don't want to go. I don't want to make it seem like, oh yeah, you can just act black or act white. But that's the whole point, is that by installing these codes into the mainstream civilization, they are not only separating you from that which is organic to your existence, but they are separating you from knowing yourself and loving yourself. So if you're constantly trying to be something or somebody else or some other kind of vibration, then you'll never know who you are. You're like 2 steps away from knowing your true meaning and purpose of being here. No different than the Big Bang Theory existing and the monkey evolution theory existing, taking away your meaning and purpose as an embodied soul. Like, when you are told those programs, that's just to make it like you're a cosmic mistake and you have no meaning and purpose. You're just, floating around in nothingness and came from nothingness. So since you have no meaning and purpose, basically just go to work and do what we tell you, the slave masters tell you. So this is the same thing that happens on a racial status. Now, I understand that there are various types of or groups of indigenous and aboriginal people and storylines, but I can only tell you, as of now, my story from the intensity and the passion that I have from my experience and my observation. I cross-reference that with observing how my story is a reflection of the larger collective story as much as possible, how we've been altogether persecuted, how we've been altogether destroyed, and how the so-called powers that be have come to this so-called power by using stuff like race, division, and flipping and reversing your perspectives of yourself, your soul, the universe as a whole, and selling it back to people, at half price with these interest rates that literally add up to your death, bringing your debt as the perspective of your reality to your debt. So all of these codes are all magic spells. These are all, like, when you listen to these TV shows that are telling you about Donald Trump and all this other stuff, and then they force that laughter and force that applause on these like Tonight shows, the late shows, these talk show hosts and so on and so forth. They force all this information onto you. They're forcing a particular vibration, a particular perspective that has a meaning and a purpose and an intention. I see that, and I see other types of programs that work the same way that go in Hollywood. Why is Hollywood so whitewashed? Why are the politics so whitewashed? Why are Europeans representing the Americas, the United States of Americas, instead of the Native Americans representing the Americas? Because this is a magic spell. There's very tangible steps that have led up to this persecution of, very noticeably, the indigenous and the aboriginal people, which is just to reference. It's just to reference the individuals who have always been and will always be connected with nature. That's not to say that there weren't non-melanated people that were never connected with nature. That's absurd. I'm not saying that. I'm speaking in reference to frequency and vibrations, but I have to use this rudimentary ass, basic, generic ass language of English to explain this, and everybody sees this in their own way. So when I say indigenous and aboriginal people, and I mention stories like the melanated genocide and so on and so forth, and white supremacy and the white superior, the white privilege and so on and so forth, some people automatically say, oh, well, you're just coming down, you're being racist yourself. Look, I'm talking about, at the core of what I'm talking about our relationship to nature. It is, ignorance itself is the utmost evil. and to separate people from nature, to separate people from their meaning and their purpose and their existence overall, and then to have them celebrate that with the university system, with Hollywood, with the mainstream media, with the public education system, with all of these storylines that are mainstream in our reality. That is the most ignorant state of being you can be at. And in order to counteract that, I will do as much as I can to share my story on how I broke free of that, because I used to be the ESPN watching every day dude. I used to be that guy. Just, I just wanted to, play baseball, go to work, watch ESPN, have a girlfriend, and then that was it. That was my life. Have a nice truck, and then, that was it. That's cool. That was my life. Until I started to ask questions about this reality. Once I started to ask questions about this reality, I started to see all the people around me who are either asking these questions or not asking these questions. And me being an artist, and a writer, I wanted to use my experience as the paint to share my story with people so they wouldn't have to go through the same troubles that I've gone through. Once I started doing that, I started to realize that my problems and my troubles that I have gone through were no different. They're a direct reflection of what the indigenous and the aboriginal people, because when I started to unveil that, I started to reconnect with my soul. I started to reconnect with nature as a whole. And then I started to observe our separation from nature. And then I started to observe the intention of the mainstream colonial Columbian era perspective, including the heliocentric deception, the design to separate people from nature, separate people from history, separate people from their culture, separate people from their understandings, understandings, and overstandings of this reality, in order to maintain control, in order to maintain slavery. When I share information about the genocide of the melanated people, the indigenous and the aboriginal people across the earth plane, that is to share ultimately our separation from nature. And the reason why, or one of the main reasons why, so-called white people have problems with me speaking on this and not speaking in reference to them directly. Look, that is not my responsibility. Your responsibility is to connect with your culture, your peoples. If you feel the desire to share that story, then so be it. But there is no information. Please do share that information with people, because it will help people realize that the indigenous and the aboriginal story that is largely rooted in the relationship with nature is more vibrant and more widespread than we have been convinced to believe. Please share those stories. I am getting to a point to sharing those stories, but there's a lot more other work that I have to do before I get to that point. I am not going to jump across any kind of chapters just because somebody says, you talk so much about this, you don't reference this. You're not the director of the information that I share. You're not in charge of this information. This stuff that I share on this channel comes out day by day. Like I say a lot of the times to my friends, each video that I make, in my head, it's like my last video, because each time it's like my first video, because I'm just starting over and over and over again and pretty much like emptying out everything that I have perceived from all the other videos in the past and everything that I would kind of like hope to share with people in this moment. So I'm kind of like clearing out all of the information and the perspectives that I have in each video in hopes that it will help at least one other person see something that I had difficulty with seeing before. And yeah, basically that's it. So like I said earlier, a lot of what this boils down to is self-love. And one of the main things that I've been seeing that is very difficult for people to see in reference to, like, if you are not part of the solution, then you are part of the problem, in reference to flat earth and the new age and so on and so forth, and so-called white people kind of just jumping on board of this. The new age community is heavily weighted in this, in the European like sort of perspective, and when you look in that, it's heavily like just mostly like white people connecting with their alien ancestors. And what I'm saying is that largely, from one perspective, is a prescription drug to not look at what has happened, to remain indifferent to what has happened on the roots level, on the tree roots level, on the ground level, and to sell this agenda to let's just move on. The same perspective is happening in flat earth. Realizing the flat earth is just realizing that this place that we are living on or in or whatever it is, this place, it's not the storyline like the individual in a comment section said. It's not what's happening to us. It's just revealing where we are. That's actually remaining indifferent. If you focus only on where we are and not what has happened, then you are avoiding the how and the why that added up to the so-called powers that be, that convinced you into the what storyline of the heliocentric program and separated you from the what, the how, and the why of the not heliocentric universe. The intentions there are what I'm really focusing on, and what I have difficulty and problems with when flat earth channels just kind of wash this storyline as like a commercial. Oh, this is just, you know, something that is just like one of the other conspiracy theories. Let's just talk about this because it's hip, it's new, it's trendy, it's pop. No, this is not just another conspiracy theory. When you're going into these storylines, you have to go to the depths or not. Like I said in previous videos, you can choose to do whatever it is that you want. But how I see flat earth is that flat earth is allowing you to see that there's a door to yourself. It's allowing you to see the door. It maxes out at the threshold. You can make as many NASA videos and curvature video, no, lack of curvature videos as you want, but it will forever max out at the threshold of the experience itself. It will never go in to the relationship that the experience has with the experiencer. Now, a lot of these channels that are in the New Age community have generated this artificial version of self-love by reconnecting with or connecting with the Pleiadians, the Andromedans, these extraterrestrials, so on and so forth, that are completely indifferent to the storyline of the boots on the ground experience and the experiencer. It's just like another prescription drug, just like flat earth. It's just another universe. It's creating another universe. So just like the New Age community is creating a synthetic universe that's based upon ancient aliens, the extraterrestrials, and these star systems, and largely the heliocentric programming, the flat earth has the potential to do the same thing, because they are only focusing on the science of flat earth and not really stepping through that door into the experiencer and what has happened and what is happening with us in this experience. See, people in the New Age community they're not going to do that as long as they maintain that relationship with that universe, because their idea of self-love is rooted in the stars. It's not rooted in the earth. It's not rooted in the blood. It's not rooted in the storylines that have added up to now. They have uprooted themselves, flipped, reversed, and rooted themselves into a synthetic universe rooted in the stars, pretty much synthetic stars. There's no real connection here. And they know that. So like Ancient Aliens does, they take the information from the indigenous and the aboriginal people with all the pyramids and the ancient structures and ancient technologies, water it all down, wash it all out, like wash it up in a big old tub. And then they say, well, you know what? The ancient peoples were just primitive and savage, so they couldn't have done this stuff. It must have been aliens. It's the same shit. It's separating people from reconnecting with that which already has existed. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. These ancient civilizations left all of this hieroglyphics, left all of this information for us to find our way back to our root systems. And a lot of these people are still alive today. A lot of the elders still are alive today. This is not to say that the indigenous and the aboriginal people were perfect and so on and so forth. I'm not saying that. Obviously, there were imperfections. Of course, there are going to be imperfections. What I'm saying is that the society that we live in today is completely void of its relationship to nature. So far to the extreme that it has been living like a parasite at the expense of nature. So much to the extreme that not only the expense of nature, but the expense of humanity itself. It's starting to eat itself. And this is what I'm saying. If you do not acknowledge the storyline that has led up to Flat Earth, that has led up to the New Age programming, that has led up to the Columbian era and so on and so forth, then you will just be creating another artificial self-love like the New Age program does. And this is what I am seeing what is happening with the Flat Earth community. It's creating this artificial flat love, this artificial self-love, because it's largely based upon just this surface level grassroots type of relationship that we have with each other, based upon realizing that the earth is flat or not a globe and so on and so forth. It's not really going to the depths of who and what we are. That's no different than the New Age community. So side effects to this stuff of not being reconnecting with your roots, not knowing your roots, and in fact remaining indifferent to them for whatever reason. Some people don't want to lose their following. Some people just have difficulties with looking at themselves. Some people are too sensitive to go into that space, so they don't want to look at the blood. They want to act like it's not there, or maybe to an extreme that didn't even happen, or even further to an extreme, we should just move on and just forget about it, remain indifferent, and just accept our slave masters and the technology and the society and the system as it is, and just move on because we're just completely hopeless and powerless in this perspective. No. I will not stand by and let people follow that perspective. And that's what I'm saying Mark and Patricia are doing, whether they are consciously or subconsciously doing it, is not my concern. When I looked at that secret show and they were talking about me, and the tone of Patricia's voice when she was saying the word, the melanated people and all this other stuff, and and then Mark pretty much just like brushing it off like, oh, well, come on. That's basically the same perspective of, and you can look for yourself. Go look at the end of their last secret show. Go look at it. And they were saying it. The same secret show where I was timed out from commenting while they were talking about me. So this is what I'm saying. I'm no longer in a space of thinking that they're totally innocent of what's going on. They are very well aware of this information that is being presented to them, not only by me, but I know by other people. And the information is available. I know that they have been contacted by people telling them the story about the indigenous and the aboriginal people. People have contacted me, showing me how they have been contacted. And people like Orphan Red, Mark, and Patricia just kind of just wash it off. Like, oh, yeah, well, we just have to focus on other things. And then after that, what gets activated? the victim program. Oh, come on. Like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just not talk about this? Like, come on. Like, just like that politician did in that last video where he was the head of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and got all defensive when he was going to be interviewed about billions of dollars of missing money for the Native American. Like, these are all defense mechanisms that are largely rooted in the lack of self-love that so-called many white people have, because they haven't gone to the depths of acknowledging what has happened, whether they are consciously doing it or subconsciously. Like I said, I don't care about that. That's not my concern. That's up to you to let go of that guilt. There are no white people alive today that had slaves that added to the beginning of, just for an example purposes, the slavery in the United States of America. You are the descendants of this storyline. What I'm saying is that as long as you remain indifferent to the evil that is the foundation that led up to not only the power in the Americas, in the United States of Americas, to say, look, we're in charge of this shit. We are Americans, not the Native Americans, not the indigenous Americans, not the Aboriginal Americans. We are the ones who represent the Americas across the earth. We are your leaders. That is more dangerous and worse than evil. To remain indifferent to this evil is worse. And this is what I am seeing is what's happening, not only in the politics, that's obvious, not only in the mainstream, that's obvious, but what is now happening also in the flat earth community, because the individuals who are speaking in reference to flat earth, and I'll use Mark's words again, the message of flat earth is completely indifferent to what led up to the deception overall. That's why I say these individuals are dangerous, whether they know it or not, and they can be the sweetest, kindest people in the universe. The Jesuit priests and the people that were toting the Bible around to the indigenous and the Aboriginal people across the world, they were also seen as sweet and nice and just wanting to preach the word of God. And look where we are right now. They were seen as kind people too. So these storylines are very much interchangeable on many ways if you go to the extreme. And what I'm saying is that what will help a lot of this movement is if people start to acknowledge. First, you have to acknowledge these things, this evil that has existed, these stories that have existed. This stuff has to be acknowledged before any kind of so-called forward progress is made. If you're just jumping on the mainstream bandwagon and saying this will fix everything, you already fucked up. You already are on some old synthetic universe bullshit that is just setting up the next slave program. You're already there. You can be the nicest person in the world. You can say the most truth about flat earth and the heliocentric deception that you want. But if you are just going to continue to remain indifferent to the power that led up to those programs that you so tote around and sell to the mainstream populace, then you're going to have some people that say, you know what, you need to pump your brakes. Please. Because not everybody is a house slave. Not everybody is going to sit around and just, accept the next mind control program and the slave program like many of the people did in the past with like the Civil Rights Act and so on and so forth. Did that address the origination of racism or anything? No, that was a doggy treat to shut people up. No different than Obama was placed in there after George Bush to shut people up. Oh, we have our first black president. How wonderful. Things are really changing. No, they aren't. Oh, the earth is not a globe? Oh, the earth is flat. Oh, people are getting in trouble because they've been stealing millions and billions of dollars for hundreds of years. Oh, things are really changing. Thanks, flat earth. No. I will not buy that cartoon commercial house slave bullshit. I'm not going to buy it, and many other people are not going to buy it. And since there are regular people making videos right now, then you have the opportunity to speak on these things that are not, they already pretty much exist. The ball is already rolling in that perspective. It's already there. So whose responsibility is it to address this evil and this indifference to evil? It's everybody's responsibility. If you are really going to do something about it, if you really care about it, if you're connected to it. Because like I said, the indifference to, this is not my quote, obviously, the indifference to the evil is worse than the evil. And if you are not part of the solution, then you are part of the problem. So walking around, you can be the kindest person in the world, but if you're part of the problem, knowingly or unknowingly, and not part of the solution by recognizing what has happened to the experiencers, then somebody's gonna say something about that. So I just wanted to share another quote before I close this out. I was watching this individual who refers to herself as a UFO contactee. Her name is Miriam Delicado, and I just like to see where these people are coming from, and what they're saying and how they're selling this stuff to people, and just give another example of how the New Age community, and same way with the Flat Earth community, will be received and is being received and not being received overall, so people can get another understanding. So this individual, this video that I'm looking at right now is called The World Awakens in 2017 by Miriam Delicado, UFO contactee. The first contact on there, the first comment on that video says, "Hi there, Miriam. The agitators, as you call them, will not hear your plea. For many of them are the abused and stepped over in our society, the melanated remnants of the African Holocaust, which never ended. Many of them will never listen to any message coming from a Euro-type person as yourself. Just saying." So that's kind of like what I'm saying is the same storyline of Flat Earth and overall with the New Age community, because the New Age community remains indifferent to the indigenous and the aboriginal storyline, the relationship with human and nature, and this storyline as a whole. Nobody is really going to connect with that storyline, largely because subconsciously they know it's a synthetic universe. But even more so, to boot, the people in there are even more so synthetic feeling, because they consistently remain indifferent to what's happening on the boots on the ground, and they create storylines like, or prescription drugs like, well, those are those people going through those experiences. No different than Mark and Patricia just poo-pooing my response during their secret show aside, say, oh, well, he's talking about the melanated people, and Mark, oh, come on, basically we need to move on. So subconsciously and consciously, the New Age community, inherently in its name, New Age, there's nothing new. None of the information, none of the technology, none of these perspectives in the New Age community is new. All of it is ancient, not ancient aliens, ancient peoples. And by acting like this stuff is new, you are instantaneously going to throw off the majority of people 100% subconsciously and a large percentage consciously. Why? Because you haven't done the work of acknowledging what the tree roots have gone through and are still going through today. You have just created another program to act like this stuff doesn't exist, to remain indifferent to the evil, which is worse than the evil itself. So yes, you will have people, and you know, this individual, Miriam, she's probably looked at that comment and she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't know how to see that. One, because a lot of so-called white people have this either conscious, if they look at it, but instantaneously subconscious guilt, this white guilt that comes. They don't know what to do with that information. It's instantaneous. They think like that. A lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people, it's a side effect to having lived an entire life and still living through white privilege and the existence of white supremacy and so on and so forth. If you act like that stuff doesn't exist, it doesn't make it go away. It actually makes it get worse. That's what the indifference to evil is. So the New Age community is based upon that. They bank on this. They need you to buy into the alien extraterrestrial agenda so they can sell in the transhumanism technology agenda and this Elon Musk going to Mars and all this SpaceX stuff. They need you to buy into these sidestepping versions of your reality so you won't reconnect with yourself and challenge the system. You won't stop giving your power away to the system. You will constantly be looking outside of yourself for some kind of savior or something to happen. There's no power there. So that's what this system thrives on, and that's what I'm seeing with the flat earth, or at least the pop culture flat earth community, is moving towards. When it doesn't acknowledge the evil of the experience and what has happened to the experiencers who are connected with nature. And what I'm saying is that it's going to be easier for people in the flat earth to realize this relationship, this indifference, and their connection to nature overall, because flat earth is not like a religion. Like the New Age is basically like a religion, but flat earth is not like a religion. It's just a realization of, you know, where we are and what's going on here. So once we go into that space, it kind of remains like this clean slate, that you're at this doorway and you're open to yourself to do whatever it is that you need to do to realize a deeper layer of yourself and what's going on here. But the New Age, like I said in the last video, the New Age community has a long way to go. They can't let that stuff go. They've layered on top of it with aliens and sightings and UFO, like abductions and all kinds of other stuff. So I just wanted to, you know, expand upon this artificial self-love, this this guilt that exists, this self-love that is natural when you start to realize and acknowledge what has happened to the human storyline as a whole, more noticeably the indigenous and the aboriginal people, and stop remaining indifferent to the evil, which is actually more evil in itself. Which is why I'm saying, if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. And the solution isn't just to get the word out about flat earth. It's how that information is coded. If it's coded in a powerless house slave mentality, let's just get it out and let the mainstream do with it what they will. Then everything will be okay. That's a house slave mentality. They're not trying to share information to help people find out, you know, how this power grid added up to itself. They're just trying to look very linearly. And that's dangerous. Because like I said, if you're not part of the solution is not going mainstream. That's far from the solution. Going mainstream is not the solution, flat earth. Even if the new age, any of this shit, anything dealing with the mainstream is not the solution. Now, I'm not saying I know the solution, but I can say very firmly what isn't the fucking solution. Your slave master's programs and magic spells is not the solution. Part of the solution is reconnecting with what has already been done by your ancestors and reconnecting with nature. That's part of the solution. That's as far as I go. I don't claim to have any solutions or messages or anything like that. Don't follow me or anything. Make a leader out of yourself. Lead yourself back to yourself and realize that the connections with everybody in nature. Go from there. Keep it very basic. This existence is very simple. It's not as complex as the heliocentric universe would like you to believe. So when and if and when no, I'll just say when the flat earth gets co-opted by the mainstream media, best believe they're just going to complex the hell out of it in order to maintain power over the masses. And the people who haven't reconnected with themselves, with nature, and who haven't acknowledged what has already happened that has led up to the power of the mainstream, the people who still remain indifferent to evil, because if you remain indifferent to evil, you won't be able to see evil. You can't see it because you're worse than it. So when the people who are remaining indifferent to what has happened, the genocide and the massacre of the people who are related, connected to nature, when people are in that mode, are faced with an evil that's dressed in a kind face and a wonderfully new version of reality, a new world, a new age, a new perspective on life, and that is actually coded in evil, you won't know because you spent your entire life remaining indifferent to evil. So that's pretty much what I had for this video. I won't stand by while any house slave revolutions get going. This is not a house slave revolution. The Civil Rights Act was a house slave revolution that the people that were remaining indifferent to the depths of this evil bought into and still celebrate today. The people who are aware and were aware of what the Civil Rights Act was back in the day, they knew that that was a hush. That was a hush pillow. It's just hush, hush, keep quiet. We're going to give you got to give them something. Otherwise, they're going to revolt too hard. When it's activated through the mainstream, it becomes a house slave revolution. If your leaders are house slaves, you will have and be following a house slave revolution. Realizing the flat earth, the relationship with nature, and realizing the storylines of the depths of separation the people have gone through from separating themselves and being separated from nature won't allow a lot of people to accept any kind of house slave revolution. And a lot of people won't even know. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know that they have guilt. A lot of people don't know that they're house slaves or are indifferent to evil because it's normal. It's not natural, but it's been normal for years. And a lot of the times they just aren't privy to the information. Once you become privy to the information, some people get guilty, and then until they process that guilt, they just remain guilty. But when you process it, you start reconnecting with nature and you start doing something about that indifference. It's a different world, but it's up to you, the individual, to do that. Nobody else can make you do that. It's nobody else's responsibility to present the information to you. It is your responsibility. And like I started off with this video, my responsibility is only to share my experiences, my stories that I put on myself. That is my responsibility that I put on myself to help other people not go through this. for future generations. Not for a little fix it quick thing like, oh, let's just make this go mainstream and then everything will be okay. It won't. If you're not thinking 7 generations out, then you're not really thinking. Somebody else is thinking for you. And that's an extreme mind control program. So thank you for joining me. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.